Layoff announcements for January surged 205%. There were nearly 110,000 layoffs announced in January. Guys, this is 118% higher than January of last year. And this is the highest reading for any January since 2009, which is absolutely crazy, the amount of layoffs that are happening. But it's not all bad news. There is some interesting hiring trends that I think is really important for guys like you and I to know about if we want to remain relevant, respected, and financially free in this new AI world. But we'll get to that in a moment. We'll get to that good news in a moment. I want to highlight a quote here from Challenger and Gray. According to Challenger and Gray, quote, generally we see a high number of job cuts in the first quarter, but this is a high total for January. It means most of these plans were set at the end of 2025, signaling employers are less than optimistic about the outlook for 2026. And, there could be a lot of reasons why the employers are less optimistic about 2026. Could be that they overreached and they hired way too much trash. It could be that, the banks are starting to get cold feet on all the loans for AI infrastructure. I mean, we saw hundreds of billions of dollars either actually spent or promised to be spent last year on AI and infrastructure construction. And again, the banks are starting to ask, like, well, show me the money, Jerry Maguire style. They're asking, when are we going to actually see these returns? There's insane promises when it comes to AI. And I think a lot of them will actually come true. Regardless, the banks are starting to wonder. And with less cash flow, with less capital investment, it means I think these companies are needing to say, hey, we need to kind of streamline our operations. We need to lay people off. It's happening quite a bit. There are also a few major announcements, because guys, this shouldn't really be a surprise that January was a bad month. If you're subscribed to the channel and you're keeping up with all these trends, you would know this before everyone else does. But there were a few major announcements that we covered on the channel, one of which was UPS announced they're laying off 30,000 jobs and closing 24 facilities. Why? Well, because they cut ties with Amazon on low profit deliveries. We covered this in a video. It's very, I think, important to understand what's happening with the transportation and delivery system. So you can go watch that video here about why UPS fired 30,000 employees. Amazon also announced they're laying off 16,000 corporate employees. And we covered that in a video too. You can watch this video here about why Amazon was firing so many jobs and so many employees. And these are corporate employees, guys. These are not like delivery drivers. These are not warehouse workers. We've covered that as well in the past, how there are now over 1 million robots in Amazon warehouses. So that kind of transfer of labor is already happening. We also saw an internal leaked memo that stated that Amazon was actually planning to replace up to 600,000 jobs over the next 8 years with robots. But that's besides the point. What we're trying to say here, guys, is that, again, if you're subscribed to the channel, if you're keeping up with these trends, you would know before everyone else, A, and B, UPS huge layoffs, Amazon huge layoffs, amongst others. We covered a bunch of different layoffs that happened during the month. But the one thing that is also important, something to keep in mind, is, which industries are hit the hardest? We have 110,000 jobs nearly that are laid off. Which industries are being hit hardest? And hold that thought. We'll get to that in just a moment, because first I just want to briefly cover some of the main reasons why these announcements occurred. I think it's really important that we understand why. Is it all AI? Is it all tariffs? Is it the economy? What is the reason? What are the reasons these companies say they are doing these layoffs? So the most common reason for layoffs was loss of contracts. And, we look at what UPS being, 30,000 because they lost the Amazon contract. This was also followed by market conditions, overall market conditions, economy, interest rates, tariffs, global unrest, stuff like that. And then also restructuring. So, you've got a couple companies that merge, or, a company says, oh, we've got way too much bloat here over in HR. Let's get rid of all the Karens. That sort of thing can happen as well. Now, what's also interesting, and a really key number here, guys, is AI. Where does AI factor in? Well, AI accounted for 7,600 terminated jobs in January. Guys, that's 7% of all layoffs were related to AI, a little under 7%, which, by the way, I think is interesting because if you go back to last year, 55,000 layoffs were attributed to AI during entire 2025. Well, at 7%, at 7,600, we're starting to see that hockey stick happen where we see lots of layoffs related to AI. And I know a lot of people say AI is not real, it's all fake, it's not gonna replace jobs. I mean, you see people like the AI czar, David Sachs, say that, and I hope that's the case, but this is the reason why we're covering this stuff, guys, because in my opinion, AI is going to usher in a whole new world when it comes to careers for guys like you and I. And this idea that, well, you're going to have universal basic income and the government will take care of your needs and Sam Altman will pay for all your food. I don't dig that. I don't buy that. It seems really, really risky to me. I want to make sure that I'm relevant. I want to make sure that I can provide for my family. I want to make sure that I have skills that actually matter in this new world. So anyway, let's keep going in on this because I think that Challenger and Gray had a really interesting quote when it comes to the amount of AI layoffs. Check this out. They said, quote, "Leaders are talking about AI and many companies want to implement it in operations. And the market appears to be rewarding companies that do mention it." And there's this belief that there's a couple thoughts here I think are interesting. There's a belief that that these companies really want to leverage the AI. They want to be first. They want the first mover advantage to leverage this AI because once you get AI, once you get integrated, once you're executing at it, it's crazy scalable, insanely scalable. Like once you set off AI agents, they start doing their things, it is way more cost effective than labor, theoretically. And we've seen companies like Salesforce and Mark Benioff announced that, hey, we've got AI agents handling all of our customer service, so we're laying off half of our customer service staff. We covered that in a video months ago. Months ago. Guys, this should not be a surprise. I'm telling you, you're gonna be at a barbecue in a few months and someone's gonna be like, oh, they just laid off half my company. You'll be like, yep, Mark and the people on Mark's channel have been talking about this for over a year. You could have been prepared, you could have been taking steps, but now you're in trouble because it's going to start happening everywhere. Anyway, I digress. The reality is what happened with Salesforce is they laid off half their staff, but now there's reports that it's not really working out too well. We saw the same thing with Klarna. They laid off a bunch of customer service agents, brought in AI bots to handle customer service, and then just the quality control suffered. Customers weren't happy. The same thing's happening at Salesforce. So again, you've got companies that are really pushing to implement the AI, but it's still choppy, it's still sloppy. It kind of reminds me of all the people in my newsfeed that are going crazy over the Claude bot, which was changed to Moltbot, which was then changed to OpenClaw. All these people freaking out about how amazing this technology is. And on the surface, I think it looks amazing. I think it's going to be amazing. But there were a bunch of problems. There are security threats. You could go watch that entire video about Claude. But if you're not sure what that is, it's essentially an AI agent that effectively you give autonomy to control your computer. Go check out that video. It's absolutely bananas what happened there. The second thing that I think here when it comes to AI is, we covered this in a video talking about Oracle a few days. I know I'm referencing a lot of videos, guys, because this is the type of stuff that we've been covering over the past weeks and months. But the other thing that is happening here that I think is indirectly related to the AI layoffs is in order to pay employees, you need cash. You need cash. You can't just make money fall out of thin air. You need the cash flow in order to pay your employees. And a lot of that cash flow, especially with big organizations, comes from loans, from debt. They take on venture capital, they take on loans from the bank. And the problem here, and I kind of alluded to this before, is that a lot of that money that was being invested last year was invested on this promise to banks that all this AI technology is gonna really start to pay off. We're gonna start banking. And as we saw, and we're kind of seeing with Oracle, it's not confirmed yet, I'm watching closely, but the speculation there is that the banks are starting to say, hey, we're not sure we actually wanna lend you the $10 billion to build data centers because we already lent you 40 or 50 bill, and we're not sure we're gonna get that money back. So that's slowing the cash flow, and that's becoming an issue when it comes to hiring. So again, that's maybe a slightly, they might call it restructuring, but that actually I think could indirectly be related to AI. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. So let's cover which industries are being hit hardest with layoffs in January. And I think this is really important because if you're in one of these industries, you kind of want to see what the trends are in your industry. Because if you get laid off in a mass layoff, well, not only you get laid off, you're probably going to want to go find a new job. You're going to competing against a bunch of people in these industries. So the number one that got hit hardest, according to Challenger and Gray, I've got a couple surveys here, a couple studies, is transportation with 31,000 layoffs. Tech came in second at 22,000. Again, you got Amazon, you've got UPS, so that kind of checks out. You've got healthcare at 17,000, which I thought was fascinating because from what I can tell is that it looks like healthcare is booming and there's a lot of jobs raising there. And then chemical manufacturers at 4,700 layoffs. Also took a reading from ADP's January job report, and they report that professional and business services were the highest at 57,000 layoffs. And these are, obviously guys, these are the types of administrative roles that are highly susceptible to AI, also to bloat and administrative glut. You're looking at stuff like consulting, HR, customer service, SDR work, marketers like myself. So these are those white collar jobs. These same guys, these same cats that were telling you to learn to code 10 years ago are now starting to kind of feel the pain. And again, with AI, with automation, with the overreaching of tech companies and hiring, we're starting to see that flesh out. Other services, according to ADP, came in second at 13,000. That's miscellaneous types of businesses like repairs and maintenance, hair salons, dry cleaners, all kind of like miscellaneous services. And then they noted that manufacturing is down 8,000. So, obviously January, not a great month. Again, I think that understanding what's happening in the market, which careers are, which fields are seeing layoffs, why are layoffs happening, can help you to be better informed so that you're able to stay relevant, respected in your industry, and keep your financial freedom. Now, another thing that I think is interesting is, and I want to kind of circle back to the beginning here of like, well, what's the good news, Mark? This all sounds terrible. This all sounds terrible. Well, there were some hiring announcements, and it's not great. Amongst those hiring announcements, we had 5,300 hiring announcements, and this was the lowest since 2009, since Challenger and Gray started measuring this. So not exactly good news. But what I think is interesting, I think what is important is that it's smaller companies that are doing the hiring. The large companies, the big companies are shutting down the career ladder. They're saying, hey, we're just gonna kind of cut all the glut. Well, then what's happening? All these people are going and they're taking jobs at smaller companies. Smaller companies between 50 to 500 workers, 499 workers, are adding nearly all of the jobs in January. So what does this say to me? Well, it tells me that we are in a season, you need to be in a season, I need to be in a season of intense learning and networking and building resume. And I'll give you a perfect example. If you're working at a big organization, you want to learn. You want to learn how things work very professionally at a high level. You want to learn how to do your job well. You want to learn trends in the industry. You want to learn best practices. You want to start collecting standard operating procedures. You want to make sure that you are developing relationships with people that matter in that field. You want to make sure that you have a Rolodex of people that you can call on when you have projects. Because what's going to happen is that at some point, you may lose that job at that corporate office, and you might take a job and at a smaller company and say, hey, Jim, I was working at company X. We were doing 10 million in annual recurring revenue every year. I was able to do this and bring it to here. I have these people in my Rolodex. These are the skills that I have. I'm bringing with you spreadsheets. I'm bringing with you standard operating procedures. I'm bringing with you different automations that we learned. I can implement all this stuff that this massive company had into your smaller company. And that, my friends, is going to make you very, very appealing. And if you are able to execute on that, well, then you can have some big asks. You can ask for a big salary. You can maybe ask for equity in your company. Hey, if we bring your company from, 5 million ARR to 30 million ARR, I want 5% equity when we exit. So there's things that you're gonna be able to negotiate. Maybe you want a company car. Maybe you want, there's all sorts of things you can ask for. So again, the point I'm trying to make here is that we're going through a time of intense turmoil, lots of layoffs, but this is where we're building resume. And guys, I'm doing this in my own positions, companies I'm working with, I only want to be taking on jobs where A, I know I can be successful, and B, I know that I'm learning skills that are going to be that are enriching me, that are making me more relevant in the workspace. All the stuff that I kind of talked about here, laid out at the end, is the way that I'm looking at this new economic system, as it were. Because the other thing, and I'll kind of close with this, the other thing that I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize is happening is that a lot of companies are actually firing people because of AI or restructuring, whatever reason. They're firing their employees, and then they're turning around and realize that, oh, we fired too many, let's hire some people back. But they're not hiring people as W-2 employees. They're hiring people as 1099 contractors. So then you need to navigate that whole system of how to formulate your taxes and set up an LLC and how to obtain benefits and so on and so forth. So there's a lot to kind of go through. It's going to be a really crazy year this year, but if I had to give one piece of advice, it's that you want to stay relevant, you want to test the new projects, you want to build your Rolodex, you want to build your skills so that you are relevant moving into the next phase. And with all that, if you like today's video, thanks for liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. But check out what happened just this past week with Washington Post. I'll post a link to it here. Washington Post also going through a huge change. They laid off 1/3, 300 people from their staff. They fired almost their entire staff. 1/3 of their staff is completely gone at the Washington Post. This is a newspaper that's been around for over 100 years, and they are laying people off. Why? Because the world has changed, and a lot of employees, a lot of people in their careers have not adapted. Adapt, watch the video, I'll check you there. See ya, peace.